Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Tajweed Talks. So somebody asked a really good question, and this is something that is an issue for a lot of students of Tajweed. She asked, how can we practice in a way that we do not keep practicing our old mistakes? So firstly, this begins with understanding what your mistake is. It is very important that you ask your teacher exactly what your mistake is. Okay, and then there are 3 important steps in understanding our mistake. The first one is that make sure that you can actually differentiate between the correct and incorrect sound. So if you can't hear the difference between the correct sound and incorrect sound, you're not going to be able to fix it on your own. Okay, so the first thing to do is to determine whether you can actually tell the difference. Secondly, make sure that you understand what you are doing incorrectly. Okay, so for example, sometimes there's a letter that you're saying incorrectly and you don't exactly know what you're doing wrong, right? So obviously you can't fix your mistake if you don't know what you're doing wrong. So you need to ask your teacher or then research what exactly you're doing wrong. Where does your tongue need to be? What position do your lips need to be in order for you to produce that sound correctly? And the third thing is always mark your mistakes. And my suggestion is that, sometimes like if you have a mistake and you simply underline it or you simply circle it, you may forget what the mistake was, right? So for example, if in a particular word you have circled the letter qaf, your mistake could be that you didn't make it heavy enough. Your mistake could be that you didn't use the right bakhraj. Your mistake could have been that you had read the vowel incorrectly. There could be so many different mistakes on that letter or on that word. So it's always a good idea to either have like a little post-it note in which you've written exactly what the mistake is, or write it in the margins. So this way, when you're practicing, you know exactly what it is that you need to practice. Okay, now while you're practicing, it's important to practice from the mushaf in which you have marked your mistakes. Okay, that way every time you read that ayah or you read that word, there's a visual clue as to where your mistake is, and then you'll pay more attention there. Okay, the other thing is isolate the sound or the word you are having a problem with. So I noticed that a lot of students, like let's say they have a problem in one particular vowel sound or one particular letter in the whole ayah, they keep repeating the whole ayah, and sometimes that hinders you from practicing that letter or the one place where you have a mistake. So it's very important to isolate that sound and try to bring it down to its smallest piece. So if it's just the fatha, so let's say you had a mistake on qaf dhamma qu, okay, and your mistake was that you weren't making the dhamma round enough. So first start with the dhamma, just say oo, and round your lips. The other, then move on to the letter qaf dhamma qu, and then say the word yunfiqun, okay, and then say the ayah, and sort of isolating the letter or the sound that you have a mistake on will inshallah help you to say it correctly and to practice it better. All right, the other thing is, this is a little bit tricky, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. When you try to say it at least once correctly to your teacher or to whoever it is that you recite to. And when you do, instead of just remembering the sound, try to remember what the physical sensation was. Where did you feel a tightness? Where was your tongue placed? Was there like a puff of air on the side of your mouth? What was the physical sensation? Now, this is really important because this helps you to determine whether or not you're saying the sound correctly the next time you say it on your own. Because not only are you relying on the sound, but you're also being able to gauge it from the sensation. Like, am I feeling that vibration in my chest when I say ha? Am I feeling that tightness in my throat when I'm saying ain, right? So inshallah, that will sort of remembering the sensation will also help you when you're practicing on your own to know whether or not you're saying it correctly. And lastly, record yourself. So after you've practiced, then record yourself, because sometimes we can't hear our mistakes when we're reciting, right? But oftentimes when we record ourselves, we can hear our mistakes a lot better. So definitely record yourself at the end of your practice session or somewhere in the middle to determine whether or not you've worked through that mistake. Lastly, if you are using a reciter to practice, make sure that you pause the recording and then you recite, because if you recite along with the reciter, you're not going to be able to necessarily hear all of your mistakes. But when you pause it and then you recite, you're going to hear your mistakes a lot better. Okay? So in conclusion, in order to prevent yourself from practicing your mistakes, number one, know exactly what your mistake is. Is it in the vowel? Is it in the letter? Mark the mistake, circle it, underline it, mark it, highlight it, but also somewhere take a note of exactly what the mistake is. Is it a mistake in the pronunciation of the letter, in the pronunciation of the vowel? Is it that the hunna wasn't heavy enough, or was the hunna too light? Whatever it is, whatever the case is, write that down. Thirdly, when you do say it correctly, when you are practicing with your teacher, make sure that you not only note down theoretically what the mistake is, but also that you try to remember what the sensation was. Where did I feel some pressure? Where did I feel a vibration? Where did I feel a puff of air? Okay, where exactly was my tongue placed? And that will, inshallah, when you begin to practice on your own, and when you have your individual study time, then it will be a lot easier for you to know where your mistake was, what it was, and how to make sure that you're saying it correctly. So then when you're practicing, use the same mushaf, isolate the sound that you have a mistake on first, then go back and read it as a whole word and then the whole ayah. Record yourself and then listen to yourself again to make sure that you've corrected the sound. I hope that helps. Inshallah, next week we will be looking at imala. See you then.